from the Big Bang, even everything was predestined to happen the way that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is the Pine Men.
Yeah, and it's a weird concept because in a lot of ways, I even, we talk about this a lot, how like so many things about the way that we live and the way society is set up, it's like I always say it's like so unnatural. Like what like this is not,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, we're just animals who evolved into this, same as every other animal evolved into what they are, and this was the natural. Unfortunately, this was the natural course of the process, I guess. And I mean, so technically, it's like just the same way that woodpeckers, learn to at some point, like they evolved to drill holes in the trees to get their little larvae out of there and eat. We evolved to colonize the southern hemisphere and extract minerals and
Yeah,
resources at the expense of our fellow man and
yeah.
all
Well, you think
people.
about it, like even back to like the beginning of like modern history. Well, what even I guess is considered modern history, but I would say like think about monarchies. Like there's a single ruler that like basically their power is like the land that they control. It's basically that's like where their power comes from,
Yeah.
right?
uh
I mean, is that a decent way of explaining it?
as opposed to what would be like their power is the land they
Well,
control, as like what else would it be?
now power is like directly linked to capital
Yeah, yeah.
versus like capital comes into play much later when like global trade starts happening and like capitalism kind of slowly takes over, and like the reason why monarchies are inevitably like deconstructed is because there's another system that is possible now, which is capitalism. And like the kings or like the like smaller like townships, I guess they're technically like, what are they, barons, stuff like that, like
Oh,
the
okay.
lower
Yeah, like
tier like
dukes and
rulers and stuff like,
whatnot. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And it's just like,
Lords, I
yeah,
guess, right? Yeah.
yeah, lords. And it's like, yeah, they control this land that like the guy above them controls them, kind of, that whole thing.
Yeah, I guess what it would be, I mean, yeah, that's like basically feudalism, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's feudalism, and that's
But
that's what I'm getting at. It was like,
yeah.
but the main thing that I'm getting at is like, what is offered to the people is a lot less because there is a lot less generally. Like their main concern is getting food,
Right.
and shelter and safety from like barbarians,
Right.
or like people who are gonna like from other civilizations who are gonna like sack the town if they don't or
Right. In that, basically what the ruler offers is like, yeah, protection from that. Like,
mm-hmm.
they'll call the bannermen and, have them defend, the
Yeah,
peasants who work the land and produce for the kingdom, I guess you could say. Yeah, that standing army is what keeps them in power, I guess. And by having more people not starving to death, I guess, they, you know, depend on the king, I guess. I mean, obviously, it's debatable. It's not like they depend, obviously, just in the way that it was, that is how it played out. It's like, obviously, anyone could have, you know what I mean? If people consider some random if there was like an uprising and then they said, we are now the legitimate rulers of this land or whatever, it's like, okay, well, I mean, if you have the strength of numbers and, the support of the army, yeah, it is, it is, because
yeah,
who's going to stop you,
yeah,
right? Yeah, with like Alexander the Great and stuff, it's just like he just conquered stuff and it's like, yeah, I rule this now. You can join me or die, you know?
yeah. Going back to like the fiefs, I guess. Like there's a very clear like trade happening there.
Yeah,
Like you're working the land that is protected by another person and feeding them so that you can live on the land and feed yourself. I mean, whether or not that ruler should be entitled to like large amounts of wealth or not is whatever. That's besides the point a little bit.
yeah,
But
sure.
like if that ruler is generally decent to the people who are working the land and his army, then like he's going to stay in power. But if he's not, then the army will just. It's like it. Basically, I guess what I'm saying is it's such a smaller ecosystem.
Okay.
Generally speaking, even like a large kingdom back in the day is still like a generally small
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Right.
Like the people who are at fault for any like bad calls can be easily slain.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Kind
Yeah.
of
True.
like is what I'm saying. It's like it's not as which then like the markets form and global trade happens, and then that causes things to get way more convoluted, and which in turn leads us to where we're at now, where things are so convoluted that we have no idea who to blame at the end of the day.
So, yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. I see what you mean now. So correct me if I'm wrong. What you're basically saying is like, yeah, back then it was pretty much one person or family, I guess, but really one person pretty much ruling over a kingdom, which was basically the equivalent of like the size of a city, pretty much. You know what I mean, for the most part. And then it's like it all falls on that person. Like, in Russia, even because they had that going on up until the 1900s, right?
Yeah.
And they yeah, it's like, okay, you are to blame, and it was made known. You know what I mean? Like, and he was killed. And his
Yeah.
and his family was killed. And then but yeah, you're right. If it once like in the situation that we're in now, it's like, okay, like if bad things are happening in the world, it's like, yeah, it's just too much. There's so many moving parts that it's hard to just point the finger and
Yeah.
be like, this is it. Well, you're it. You know what I mean? You're the problem. It's
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
you can point at like imperialism and the economic systems and stuff, but that's like, once again, they'll be like, oh, okay, who's to blame for that? I mean, that's pretty much the entire basis of American politics and probably most Western politics is like, oh no, I mean, we want to do the right thing, but they're
Yeah.
stopping us. And then the other side
Yeah.
is saying the exact same thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, this is obviously it just feels like this. I'm sure that I would be surprised in the future about how far we can go. But it
With
feels like we're already at this point where it's already so convoluted and everyone's kind of aware of it, where it's bound to break down. All of these like convoluted systems that have come into play have been responses to like other problems that have arisen.
no, you're
You
right.
know, and it's like it seemed like a good idea at the time. Like one of my favorite sayings really is like, the road to hell is paved with good intention. Like it's just so funny and true. It's
Yeah.
like people are just trying to like figure out the best way to do things while, a little bit trying to like get a little bit more ahead than the other guys too. And it's just that over and over again until you are like, there's a few people who have all the money.
Yeah. And no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's like, that's like, we talk about nowadays, everyone, we talk about, oh, the free market and stuff like that, which is obviously goes hand in hand with capitalism. And with that specifically, it's like where did that come from? It comes from back, like you said, back then it was like, oh, I am your ruler because I have the divine right. My family was chosen, and my lineage, my kin will take up the throne after me, and that's just the way it is, and that's how it will always be, and you pay fealty to me, and I will protect the land, and you need me. And then things changed, and it became like, oh, like, it started with like the merchant class, having the ability to be like, hold on, we can generate wealth on our own and be more independent and be more free. And that's like where, the whole like libertarian attitude, comes from. Well, old back then at least. And like,
Yeah.
it's like, because I guess at the time, compared to what they were experiencing, that was like freedom. You know what I mean? Like, you can go and, sell your fish at the market, and you don't have to give, a bunch of your money to the king and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but then now
It's
here we
honestly,
are
I
where
just thought of something interesting. Like, it's always like the like left leaning people who are deemed like idealistic,
Hmm.
right? Would you say? I feel like that seems to be more
Yeah,
the
that's a
case. Like,
common thing.
oh, like
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. You're
the right
absolutely, yeah.
leaning the right leaning ideas too are same. They're idealistic too.
Of
Like
course.
they're like, the whole argument for free market capitalism is if it worked right, it would be
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
And it's like it's the same. It's they you see people write off like communism or communism specifically or socialism as like it doesn't work. But it's like, yeah, this isn't working either. So like maybe we
Right.
should come up with a better idea.
It's we view capitalism as like, well, a lot of people view it as like the default, that it's just the default. This is the way it is. This is the only thing that works. That's how it's got to be, and it just is what it is. And all the problems with it are just because other people are just not doing it right and creating those problems. Well, it's like, okay, well, how do you make that exception? Everything bad that happens right now, we live in a world where capitalism is by far the dominant system. Everything that happens is happening under capitalism. It's like, that's why I love. Well, sorry, I won't get too sidetracked right now. But yet we look at like it's a double standard, like where
Yeah,
anything bad that would happen under socialism in the past is viewed as like the whole system is just totally unrealistic and just insane. But somehow in capitalism, it's like, okay, well, what about the genocides? What about what about imperialism? What about slavery? What about, apartheid? What about all this stuff? What about
yeah,
overthrowing? What about arming fascist military groups in South America to overthrow democratically elected governments? Like, that's part of it
yeah,
too. That's not just, no, but that's not really it. Real capitalism is just when everybody gets a lot of money and then has total freedom because they have all that money from their hard work. It's like, well, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't.
yeah.
So instead, they'll just be like, oh, well, the only reason it doesn't is because of Democrats. It's like, they believe in it too. You know what I mean? You act like saying that is such a ignorant thing, in my opinion, because it's like, they're, the differences are so minor, you know what I mean? Between like, left wing and, between Democrats and Republicans. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, the differences are just like dumb social things. I mean, and they're only dumb if you're arguing on the wrong side. You know what I mean? If you're actually a person
Yeah.
who is a part of like a group that is like marginalized and stuff, it's like, yeah, it's very important. It's dumb if you're like, no, this matters to me. Back in the day, it was gay marriage. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how can you believe that that was even talked about? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
how can anybody who opposed that still have any legitimacy in any form of government? You know what I mean? How is that not just like the biggest
Well, the
sign of
wild
like,
thing
you
though,
are a moron, you have no place here, like,
I mean, the wild thing though is at the time though, it still felt like, yeah, I get why some people are hesitant about this.
well,
Now it seems even more crazy to have, you know, even mixed feelings about it.
yeah, but yeah, and
But
that,
like but at the time, honestly, I remember in high school or whatever when that was going on. Like that was high school, right?
yeah, because
Obama.
even Obama
It's
was
the
saying like, at first he was like, oh well,
I don't know.
he was
I'm
kind
not
of
sure.
against, yeah, he was on the
Yeah.
fence, right?
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton was totally against it.
Yeah. Well, it's just like that's what I'm saying though too is like the traditional viewpoints is not there's definitely value in tradition, but not every tradition is good still.
Of course, yeah.
So it's just that. And it's like let people kind of like I think, and this is obviously a very libertarian viewpoint, but just let people have their freedom. Let them just do the thing. It's fine.
Well, yeah, but no, exactly. When
you
it comes
know?
to like the social issues, it's like if you're trying to put a restriction on anybody, and it's so funny how, well, it's not funny, it's actually absolutely insane how it's always the people who claim to be like well, okay, a very principled right-wing libertarian, if you want to even, whatever they want to act like that means at this point. It's a very principled one, I guess. This hypothetical person, I'm sure that they exist. I'm sure they exist. It's just the ones that claim that they're libertarians who actually serve in Congress and stuff like that are such hypocrites. But, or, and, but if you're actually principled and stuff, and you are seriously sitting there saying that, well, okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're principled, you wouldn't be saying this, I guess, even though your idea about economics is bad in my opinion. But as far as the social issues, how can you sit there and say, I think that the government has no role in our lives? Just no, it should not play a role. It should be there to have a military. That's it, pretty much. Just defend the land. That's it. Other than that, nothing. And then you turn around and be like, oh, well, I mean, come on. Abortion? That's murder. It's like, well, according to you, like, a 6-year-old should be able to own a gun. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, maybe that's a little more of the extreme.
Is
but
insane. Yeah. I can't stand double standards. I can't stand, like, people who are like, I should be able to do this thing, but you shouldn't be able to do that thing.
Right.
It's just like, why?
Exactly.
Why? Don't say that.
No, yeah, and just on like I mean, I realize I'm kind of talking about sort of specific stuff, right now. Like I'm not trying to like, I'm trying to. It's sounding like I'm talking about specific people, but I'm trying to just talk about the idea behind it. You know what I mean? And it's so all the people I'm talking about are kind of just like a hypothetical person who represents the ideology, I guess. So.
Yeah.
But if you do stand for that ideology, especially, like if you're I mean, I guess there's a difference. I mean, I guess if you're just a straight up conservative, what is that? What? So you think basically, Jesus's words should be the law of the land. I mean, I guess actually, but that's obviously the most hypocritical thing in the world, because obviously, well, they make a good point, because we all remember when Jesus said, homeless people are homeless because they're lazy, and you can't give them money because they'll just spend it on drugs, and if you give them a house, they'll probably just trash the place. That was Jesus's philosophy, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that like
I think
sick people only deserve medicine if they get a job and can afford to. If they get a real job, not just like a minimum wage job, because that's for high school kids. They need a real job, and then they're allowed to get medicine, right? I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ came here and said, "You know what?"
Yeah, he was a founding father, I think. He was chilling with George Washington.
Yeah.
He was a slave owner, I think. Jesus, well, just kidding.
Oh dear God, can you? I mean, it's insane. Just like, oh God. Well, I mean, the biggest like conservative idea to me is make that illegal.
Make what illegal? Whatever they don't like that day.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Should probably just outlaw it. You cannot live on the street, so that's fine. We don't have any homeless people in this country because they are all
exactly.
dead.
Let's not make it illegal.
All dead or in jail.
Yeah, it would be unchristian. It would be downright ungodlike to say, oh, how do you end homelessness? Give homes to the people. No, what are you kidding me? Put them in jail. Like,
Christ would come and say definitely jail.
Yeah, he was a big jail guy, I'm pretty sure. I think he donated to the police unions and stuff like that. He was lobbying.
Yeah, definitely. Jesus is a jail advocate.
He is. He was part of the prison industrial complex. He owned a private prison, I think. He was an investor.
Yeah, he actually coined the term "all lives matter."
Unironically, he probably did, but
yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Oh my God.
He probably did.
He did, but he meant it differently, I think.
There were people before him that thought that.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, he said all lives matter, but the difference
but like,
is,
no, seriously.
Yeah, but seriously, like he didn't say all lives matter and then put a Confederate flag on his bumper on the back windshield. He didn't have all lives matter, Confederate flag, Punisher symbol with a blue line thing, through it.
Dear God, yo, the fucking
This is the Pine Man.